What is up, everybody? Bob here from Prospect Analytics. Today, we are going to look at some of my favorite deep sleepers in the Bowman game. For those of you who watch my videos before, you know that kind of our bread and butter, what I do over at Prospect Analytics, is finding undervalued prospects. I've always found that the best way to make money in Bowman is to look at the players that nobody else is looking at. You got to go outside of that MLB pipeline top 100 prospects, really dig down into the guys who aren't getting any public love that are playing well and probably deserve it. And that's why I've created my Bowman prospect rankings, the first prospect rankings that I know of that are specifically formulated for predicting Bowman card value. And when we get outside of the top 100, that is where we find a lot of our big gains throughout the season. Again, just finding these guys before they kind of break out and nobody is really talking about them. Now, just as an example, in 2025, I did an article called 10 High Upside Buys Under $20. There were some names on there whose base autograph got into the $100 range this year. Joshua Baez was on that article. Caleb Bonham was on that article. So by popular request, I brought it back prior to this season. Now, I just want to give you an idea of who was on this. This came out, as you'll see, February 17th was the day that I wrote this article. And I said, here are my top 10 prospects to buy for the 2026 season that you can buy a base autograph at $20 or cheaper. Now, those are updated comps as of today next to them, and you'll just see the kind of success that we had on some of these cheaper names. Johnny Level up 166%, Fluelling 115%, John Heel 145%, Hayden Alvarez 113%, Devin Fitzgerald 185%. So, I mean, there's guys on here we're doubling, tripling our money just because going into the season, they weren't big names. And so far, out of 10, we've only lost money on one player, JD Dix, and I'll even argue that his power kind of popping this year is actually a pretty pleasant surprise and is an 83-cent drop. I think we can live with that because on average, those 10 names that I gave in February are up 90%. Now, of course, these guys are bigger names now than they were when I wrote this article, obviously, as you can tell by the price, but they were still decent names because, you know, for 15, 20 bucks, you can get some good sleepers. The hardest part is going to be those dollar bin finds. Can you find guys that are $5, $6, $7 that have the chance to, you know, go up exponentially, get to 20, 25. For those of you who would follow me on Twitter at Big Bob's Cards, one of the players I was highest on in 2024 draft was Sam Antonacci. You know, everyone will tell you this guy doesn't have power. He's not that exciting of a hitter. But when your base autograph is $4 or $5, being good enough to bat 300 and make it to the league 2 years after you're drafted, that will make your price go up 4, 5, 6x like Sam Antonacci's had. So when you get down into these cheaper guys, they are fun because they're not big names. You're not expecting them to go up to $500, $600 base autographs. But if you buy at $5, especially if you're buying like deep color, you find a guy who's $5, you buy some golds, some oranges, you know, for a couple $100, and then that base autograph goes from $5 to $20. I mean, you're talking about real gains. These are kind of my favorite players to buy, is these really cheap sleepers. And I don't think that anybody really does a lot of research into looking into these guys, which is why I've put together this list. As of this morning, these are the 10 highest ranked hitters in my Bowman rankings that have an average base autograph under $10. Now, all of this data comes from Prospect Pulse for the pricing. If you haven't checked out Prospect Pulse, that's prospectpulsev1.com. It is the only place that I go for comping my Bowman cards. There are multipliers. There are everything that you need. Players' prices update in real time as sales are completed on eBay. It's just a great tool to use for helping comp your cards. So check out Prospect Pulse. All of these average base autograph prices I'm going to use in this video came from there as of yesterday morning when I released this article over on my website, which again is www.prospect-analytics.com. I'll give you a little more information on that at the end, but let's get into this top 10 here. First, we're going to do some honorable mentions. Now, all of these guys are in my top 250 hitters, but they fell somewhere in the 200 to 250 range and just didn't quite make the cut above these other 10. But they are also some nice sleeper names to look at for a cheap price. Those honorable mentions are going to be Anderson De Los Santos of the Orioles, Victor Arias of the Blue Jays, Cam Maldonado of the Giants. We got one of my favorite little sleepers here, Arenamo of the Rays. If you haven't watched him play, he can swing it. Dowry Fernandez of the Guardians, Ronnie Hernandez of the Red Sox, who's been on fire lately, Abimelec Ortiz of the Nationals, Brooks Brandon of the Red Sox, Daniil Ortiz of the Cardinals, and Marconi Herman of the Nationals. As I said, those guys won't make the top 10, but if you're looking for some cheap buys, those guys are all swinging it pretty well. I think they're a little bit slept on in the Bowman world right now. Starting off with number 10, Brayson Guedez of the Athletics. He just came out in 2026 Bowman. 18 years old, average base autograph is $8.33. He is my 219th ranked hitting prospect. Now, he's a fun one for me because he falls into a similar spot that I love with Juan Sanchez of the Blue Jays from this past release, and that's that he skipped the complex league and went straight to single A, and that's a tough jump to make. If you come to the States and a team thinks so highly of you, straight out of the DSL. They want you to skip the complex league. I'm immediately interested. Now, he's not nearly as highly regarded as Juan Sanchez, who is nearly a top 100 hobby prospect for me, but there's still a lot to like here for this cheap. The reason I tend to like those spots is because it's not uncommon for kids making that jump to struggle, and it kind of causes their cards to dip, which is why Juan Sanchez is kind of undervalued at this moment as well. It puts them in kind of like a nice buy low spot because the stats don't really pop, which makes people not really interested in your cards. I like Guedes, though. The approach will need some work as he struck out in 27.4% of his plate appearances and walked in only 6.6% of them. But he's batting 300 right now, which is pretty strong, all things considered, for an 18-year-old in single A. There's actually only 4 prospects in baseball who have 300 or more plate appearances at age 18 this year. One of them is Brayson Guedes. The other 3 much bigger hobby names, Eli Willits, Elian Pena of the Mets, Brady Ebel of the Brewers. Guedes has the highest batting average out of all 4 of them. I usually throw DSL stats out the window because they are extremely unreliable and very unhelpful in ranking prospects, to be honest. But last year, Guedes hit 359 with a 9.5% strikeout rate there. The bat to ball skills are really good. The downside is that some evaluators think he'll have below average power, which kind of hurts for the hobby. You kind of need that power to sell. But his 138 ISO for his age at a level where he's more than 3 years younger than his average competitor isn't too bad. I think this is a good long-term play because, you'll have to hold through the ups and downs as he adjusts to baseball here in the States. But there's some nice hobby potential here in a player that's only $8. Going into number 9, Jake Monroe of the Los Angeles Angels, $6.75 on his average base autograph. He's my 199th ranked hitting prospect. Now, during the season, I do these hot sheets where we track every prospect with a Bowman autograph every week. And my favorite part about doing it is that there's always a handful of guys who make like 3 or 4 appearances in a row. And then you're like, who? And Monroe was one of those for me. He wasn't really on my radar when I did my 2025 Bowman draft write-up, so I had to do a deep dive when he started showing up on those hot sheets. Very interesting story. Junior college guy from Illinois broke his school's home run record before going on to play his final collegiate season at Louisville, where he hit 346 with 13 homers, 12.7% walk rate, 16.7% strikeout rate, a 247 ISO, and 133 WRC+. Angels selected him in the 4th round. Now, if you read some of the draft scouting reports on Monroe, is that he has a very good feel at the plate and a solid approach, but his swing got choppy, and everyone was pretty certain that he would be hit over power. Don't tell that to him, though, because in 56 high A games this year, Monroe hit 11 home runs with a 247 ISO, which led the Angels to promote him to Double A a couple of weeks ago. When you watch him, you can definitely see what scouts talk about when the swing gets choppy at times, but it's hard to argue with the fact that he's making it work. There are only 3 qualified Bowman hitters aged 22 or younger with an ISO of 210 or higher and a strikeout rate under 18%. That list is Josue DePaula, Johnny Level, and Jake Monroe. Maybe it's nothing, but still, to have an autograph under $7 while being in that company this deep into the season definitely intrigues me at least a little bit. Number 8, we're going to go with Griffin Burkholder of the Philadelphia Phillies, my 193rd ranked prospect with a $7.70 average base autograph. Some of the risk in buying these young toolsy, as they call them, prep bats, is that their development can take time, and people kind of unrealistically expect them all to be Connor Griffin and just like dominate on day one. And then when they don't, we cast them aside, we forget about them. One of the best examples from Connor's same draft class is Griffin Burkholder, who was a top 20 chase for most people in 2024 Bowman draft, probably closer to the top 10, 15 for a lot of people. And that's because he may have had the best tools in that prep class outside of Griffin, plus power, double plus speed, great athlete. He came in with a long swing that was going to need some work. He had an approach that was a little bit too aggressive. Those two things coupled with the fact that he missed time due to injuries in both 2024 and 2025 made people kind of jump ship. But we knew this is a player that would take time, so him not staying on the field to get those much needed reps really hurt. This season, he's in single A again at age 20, which isn't ideal for, Bowman people. But for the first time since he was drafted, he's healthy, which is important. And after hitting 197 last year in 145 plate appearances, that's up to 266 this year. Walks are up from 8.3 to 11.6. Strikeouts are down from 29% to 24.6%. WRC plus up from 88 to 126. The ISO's up. I mean, there are definitely still parts of the offense that need work, specifically the contact percentage, as you see, but he has improved in every statistical category. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple more bumps in the road, but for a guy with this type of athleticism who is starting to put it together It's probably one of the better lottery ticket type prospects that you can buy in this price range. Seventh, let's go with Dean Curley of the Cleveland Guardians. He's my 189th ranked prospect, $6.70 on the average autograph. As a 6'4" shortstop coming out of Tennessee, I was intrigued by Curley in 2025 Bowman draft, but I couldn't really put him any higher than my next best category, which comes after my top 20. It comes after my high upside stashes. The consensus just seemed to be that all of the tools were good, but they all just might be average. He hit for great average last year in college, great contact, great approach, but the power and speed numbers were just kind of okay. And that's a tricky profile to get Bowman people excited about. What we've seen from him this year in high A, though, has me much more optimistic. I often reference Emmanuel Rodriguez and in years past Jason Churio as guys that don't swing the bat because their swing rates are in the low 30s percentage wise. Well, buckle up because Dean Curley's swing percentage this year is 27.4%. You throw him 4 pitches, he might swing at 1. It's crazy. Well, I admit this probably isn't sustainable. When he does actually swing, he's doing great things. 9 home runs, 15 doubles, and a triple. He has a 196 ISO. There are 117 prospects with 300 or more plate appearances this year and an ISO over 195. Only 2 of them with Bowman autographs also have a swinging strike percentage under 7%, and those are Josue DePaula and Dean Curley. He's an analytics hero, 145 WRC plus, thanks to the power. Of course, a naturally high walk rate since he's so passive, 25.6% on the walk rate, which gives him a 460 OBP. There's no doubt he'll have to swing more often as he climbs up, but given how good the contact and power have already been, I think there's a chance his numbers could pop once that bat starts to come off the shoulder a little more. Number 6, we got kind of more of a recognizable name here in Ty Pete of the Cardinals. He's my 140th ranked hitter, $9 base autograph. Now, Ty Pete is a player I've always been fascinated by for Bowman because the hobby has generally turned a blind eye to contact concerns in the past if there's enough power and speed to make a player exciting, and his combination of those two things is one of the best. Now, Pete was young for his draft class. He got drafted and started playing baseball in Single A at age 17. Since then, he's been young for every level that he's played at. Last year, as a 19-year-old in High A, he had 19 home runs and 25 stolen bases, and the only other teenage prospects in minor leagues who hit both of those marks were Connor Griffin and Eduardo Quintero. Where Pete struggles is in the contact department, and although that 19 home run, 25 stolen base season sounds very impressive, he also hit .217 with a 30.6% strikeout rate. This year he came out hot after the trade to St. Louis, batting .272, 5 homers, 5 stolen bases, and a .250 ISO in his first 29 games, which caused a jump in his autograph price to about 3 times what it is today. Unfortunately, that momentum was stopped by a concussion that kept him out over a month, but after a short rehab stint, he has returned to High A Peoria this week. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that this isn't risky because Pete has pretty regularly shown as a pro that he's going to strike out at a 30% clip. But I think the athleticism is way too good here for under $10, especially on a player who's young for every level he's ever played at, and his prices were triple what they are today just 2 months ago. I think this is a good buy low spot here. Number 5, we're going to go with Ethan Fry of the Houston Astros, who's my 138th ranked hitter. $8.79 on the average base autograph. Similarly to Ty Pete, who I just talked about, Ethan Fry has also seen his price tick down in part because he didn't play baseball for a month. However, he did begin a rehab assignment a few days ago, hit a home run yesterday, and while he's not back with the High A team, he's still in rookie ball. It's a move that's probably going to come within the next couple of days, I would imagine. On top of the injury, Fry just hasn't had that great of a season. Last year in his professional debut at Single A, he hit .330 with a 16.4% walk rate, 20.5% strikeout rate, 140 ISO, 166 WRC plus, and 122 plate appearances. The 6'4" outfielder has 60 to 70 grade power, depending on who you ask. So the 83.4% contact rate last year was a huge green flag for someone with his frame and power potential. Now, we didn't see a ton of him in college, and after barely playing in his first couple of years, he broke out last year in his only year as a starter at LSU, and he hit .331 with 13 homers, had a .319 ISO, and a 128 WRC plus. Since he was coming off of labrum surgery, he spent most of the year DHing, and he wasn't very aggressive on the base paths, leading to a lot of places giving him below average speed and fielding grades. I don't think that's fair, though. Fry was a dual threat quarterback in high school. He clocks above average run times. I think his lack of collegiate playing time has people sleeping on his tools a little bit. Houston has played him primarily in center field since he was drafted, to give you an idea of the athleticism. And after stealing 5 bases in 62 games his last year at LSU, he has 22 stolen bases in 75 games as a professional. I wish the results up to this point in 2026 had been better, but I still think he's going to be a better prospect than people expect. And you don't get many 6'4" plus power above average speed players for under $10. So I like this one a lot. Number 4 on the list, let's go with Aaron Walton of the Cleveland Guardians, my 124th ranked hitting prospect, base autograph at $8.80 on average. This is one that's really going to sneak up on you if you're not paying attention. Walton wasn't in my top 200 to begin the season, but has now climbed inside my top 125 after the newest update. The second Guardians prospect on this list from last year's draft class that has been better than expected. I suppose the Guardians know what they're doing. After transferring from Samford, Walton played 1 year at Arizona where he hit .320, 14 homers, 19 stolen bases, 10% walk rate, 13.8% strikeout rate, 269 ISO, and 135 WRC+. MLB's draft report on him was that he was built like a linebacker, kind of Mike Troutish, if you will. And though he was very physical with great tools, they thought that there might be a good bit of swing and miss. That last part has been true, with a 26.8% strikeout rate and 71.2% contact rate, both of which aren't exactly alarming, but they're not great either. The tools, however, have been better than advertised. Walton has hit 15 home runs and added 20 stolen bases in 75 games at high A this season. The only prospects in baseball with a Bowman autograph who have 15 plus homers, 20 plus stolen bases, and a swinging strike percentage under 14% this year are Josue DePaula, who I feel like is just on every list I could ever think of, Eric Hartman, and Aaron Walton. Ideally, I'd like to see the approach improve a little bit, but he's trending in the right direction after drawing 12 walks and striking out 36 times in May. That improved to 16 walks versus 28 strikeouts in June, and through 35 plate appearances in July, he has more walks than strikeouts. I feel like this is just another slept-on Guardians bat, and since the tools are so strong, I'd be very tempted to take a chance here at under $10. Going into number 3, Luke Dickerson of the Nationals, my 119th ranked hitter, 966 on the average base auto. Like I said moments ago with Griffin Burkholder, sometimes when it comes to young, athletic, toolsy prospects, you have to be patient. And another one of those who seems to be turning things around this year is Luke Dickerson. I'm a big fan of multi-sport athletes, and Dickerson is an interesting one because it wasn't football or basketball like most of those guys. It was actually hockey. He won a state championship on the ice his senior year, which ran into the start of baseball season and caused him to miss the beginning of it. And even with missing those games, he still managed to tie Mike Trout's home run record for the state of New Jersey. He has tools for days, plus power, maybe double plus speed. And while he's a bit of a developmental project, the Nats thought it was one worth giving a $3.8 million signing bonus to in the second round, which is the largest amount given to a player outside of the first round since the bonus pools even became a thing. Last year in his pro debut, he was just okay. Hit 208, 6 homers, 22 bags, 12.5% walk, 24.5% K, 117 ISO, 91 WRC+. Nothing to write home about. This year, he's been way more selective at the plate, offering at 35.8% of pitches he sees compared to 46.2% last year. That selectivity has helped him improve his walk rate from 12.5 to 20.3. His walk to strikeout ratio has gone from 0.51 to 0.74, and his OBP has gone from 315 to 391. Now that he's waiting for the pitches that he knows he can drive, he's driving them, and has seen his ISO jump from 117 to 192. Of the prospects in this price range who are worth holding in case all of that athleticism clicks, which is kind of what we're hoping for, Luke Dickerson is one of the best ones. Number 2, let's go with Yasser Mercedes of the Minnesota Twins, my 117th ranked hitting prospect, 975 on the average base auto. The reason I laugh is because a few prospects have broken my heart more times than Yasser Mercedes. He is the poster child for why you can't trust rookie ball numbers, because some hitters are just so genetically gifted that they crush bad pitching, but are still raw enough that they get eaten alive by good pitching. And that was Mercedes for years. And I can tell you this as someone who has personally watched him play for my local single-A Fort Myers Mighty Muscles team for 3 seasons in a row. When he was in the DSL in the Complex League, he looked like Superman. His card prices were crazy, and honestly, deservedly so. The tools are incredible. But then when the Twins moved him up to single A at the end of 2024, he hit 125 with a 37.5% strikeout rate, but it was only 48 plate appearances, 10 games, so no panic yet. But then the following year, he hit 186 in A ball. And then, that's when you start to get very worried. Bowman people jump ship. But even in those bad seasons, the tools that we were excited about when he was 17 years old were still there. And last year, he had an 11 home run, 36 stolen base season, despite batting under 200. This year, he returned to the same level and finally looked as good as we remember him looking in rookie ball, hitting 321 with 6 homers, 11 stolen bases, a 17.3% walk rate, 21.4% strikeout rate, 321 ISO, and a 181 WRC plus in 98 plate appearances. He has since been promoted to high A, and while there's definitely some prospect fatigue since it feels like he's been around forever, he's actually still young for the level that he's at. Mercedes has 12 home runs and 34 stolen bases this season, and though the production has fallen off since his promotion, he's now gone deep twice in his last 5 games. And currently, if you were to make a club of prospects with 12 plus homers, 30 plus stolen bases, and an ISO over 200, it would only include 4 people as of today: Eli Willits, Eric Hartman, Theo Gillen, and Yasser Mercedes. For a guy who was formerly a massive hobby name, I think there's still really strong upside at $10 just on his fantastic tools alone. And it's great that he has that hobby pedigree because his name is recognizable. So when people realize how much better he's playing this year, they might pull a, oh yeah, I remember that. I think he makes his way up some twin prospects list. And I do think that we will start to see this thing increase as we get towards the end of the season. And number 1 on the list is going to be Yeremy Cabrera of the Washington Nationals, now spelled with a Y, but if you're searching for his Bowman card on eBay, it was spelled with an I. Not sure why he changed the spelling there, but he is my 95th ranked hobby hitter, 925 on the average base autograph. He is the only hitting prospect currently inside my top 100 hobby hitters who has a base autograph averaging under $10. I will say that Cabrera is an extremely difficult prospect to get a read on, which makes him very volatile in my opinion. However, in the name of ceiling, I think this is probably our best chance to see a player this cheap go up exponentially. I say never trust DSL stats. Well, here's Cabrera's age 17 season there in 2023. This is in 46 games, 329 average, 444 OBP, 7 homers, 9 stolen bases, 15.6% walk rate, 13.3% strikeout rate, a 229 ISO, and a 161 WRC plus, age 17. Pretty bananas. He comes to the States to prove that it's not a fluke. He hits 301 with a 438 OBP, 270 ISO, and a 149 WRC plus in the Complex League. After that season ended, the Rangers let him finish off the year in Single A, where he struggled and he hit 185 in 23 games. And of course, this makes you wonder if it's another Yasser Mercedes situation where some guys just hit bad pitching well. Returning to A-ball in 2025 last year, he looked much better, 120 WRC plus in his first full season there at age 19, still really solid. After the trade from Texas and the Mackenzie Gore deal, the Nationals opted to start him there again in Single A this year, and he quickly proved that he no longer needed to be there. In 30 games, Cabrera hit 333 with 7 homers, 18 stolen bases. He had a 315 ISO and a 188 WRC plus, and thanks to his good plate discipline, his 19.7% walk rate helped him get to a 465 OBP in 142 plate appearances. Sadly, you may know what part's coming next. Since the promotion to high A, he has struggled, and the momentum that he was starting to build in the hobby kind of disappeared. His base autograph got up to $25 in mid-May, and while the struggles have no doubt created some panic selling, I'm more likely to be on the opposite side of that, willing to buy while the prices are down. I don't think this is all too different from what I said with Mercedes. Maybe his career is just this vicious cycle of struggling after a promotion, dominating when he repeats the level, struggling again after the next promotion, but he's at the same level in high A as Mercedes. He's almost a full year younger than him. Again, when you're looking for ceiling in the hobby, you got to look at tools. There are only 4 prospects age 20 or younger with more home runs and more stolen bases than Yeremy Cabrera this year. They are Eli Willits, Theo Gillen, Eric Hartman, and Tate Southacene, all really big names. As far as buy low spots on young prospects with great tools go, I think that this is probably the best one. All right, that is going to do it. I appreciate everyone for watching and listening. Again, make sure you go over to www.prospect-analytics.com. I just put out an update to my top 100 pitchers for the hobby with autograph prices, buy ratings. We have weekly hot sheets, prospect rankings that update weekly. You get your daily leaderboards and home run tracker every morning when you wake up. Again, just bring you everything I can to help you gain a competitive advantage in the Bowman game. So again, go over to www.prospect-analytics.com, become a premium subscriber today, and you'll get all kinds of fun content like this and more to help you make money.